so we call it whatever we want. I have no plan. I had no plan to do any of these things. Like we talked about, I had no plan to be a doctor. It's just something that came out of deployment of Ramadi, of seeing the compassion and the good that physicians and nurses were doing to our brothers and sisters who are wounded in combat. And I wanted to be able to do that type of good as well. And that's why I got directed to medicine. Space was never on the horizon. And we talked a little bit about where I came from. That scared little boy that grew up under my father's shadow, I never thought I could have been a SEAL or a doctor or an astronaut. There's no way. It was a different life and I was a different person. And the first time I heard about NASA and this opportunity, I don't have a great story for it. It's just I heard about being an astronaut. It's like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I wonder, like, other than space exploration, like what you do and learning about the impact that astronauts can have on our next generation and what Apollo did for our country. I mean, in the 60s, we were able to land a human on the moon with that technology, despite a growing race with Russia and all of the politics going on during that era, Kennedy's assassination. We were able to complete that, and that secured American preeminence in science and technology for decades to come. I certainly believe that. And the benefits we got from that are, you can't count that. And learning a little bit more about that and how astronauts have had the opportunity to represent humanity for good and bring together countries in a way that politics and alliances cannot do. When you talk to some of the Apollo astronauts who landed on the moon and they did their international travel, the feedback they would get from people would be, we did it. We did it together. It wasn't you Americans did it. It was we did it. And that was powerful, that countries could come together and see that as a human accomplishment. So there's something about space that takes away those borders. Because when you're up there, you don't see these distinct borders between countries. You just see a lot of blue and a lot of land. And you see how fragile the planet is. So once I learned a little bit about that type of impact, and that you can have a huge impact on the next generation of explorers, of scientists, of people who want to be a better version of themselves. Maybe I could reach out to those kids, just like me, who are scared, tired, who don't think they can amount to anything, who don't think they're worth anything. If I could reach out to them and let them know that, hey, it doesn't matter where you're from. With the right attitude, with the right hard work, if you get up every time you fail, you can amount to something and you can do positive work. You can leave a good impact, a positive mark for our world. That meant a lot to me. And that's when I put my name in the hat and wanted to be an astronaut, because it was completely consistent with my goals that I promised Mikey, Mark, Ryan, long list of our brothers who are not here with us today, that I would, for the rest of my life, do something to impact positive good in our world.
Is there a recruiter that comes around? I mean, where did you pick up a brochure in class? Where did you must have had the idea. You must have been watching, a movie or something and gone, wow, where'd it come from?
So I through just random circumstances met a former astronaut named Scott Peredzinski, who is also a physician and served with the shuttle during the shuttle era and had a lot of great missions and a huge impact. And listen to him talk passionately about our space program. That kind of gave me the idea. And then just like in the teams, I just researched what it meant to be, what the requirements were, and realized I actually, like, my math degree was consistent with that, getting a medical degree, having operational experience, working in close teams, making hard decisions with limited data under constrained times. Those were all consistent with the traits and experiences that NASA was looking for. So through an accident or whatever you want to call it, I was able to have this privilege and honor to serve our astronaut corps.
What's that screening process? How many interviews did you go through before they gave you the up check?
So there are, I can't go into great detail of this just because of the sensitivity around applications. And actually right now, coincidentally, NASA is looking for the next class of astronauts.
I know. I saw that on your Instagram.
Till the end of March, which
Johnny Kim's out recruiting for NASA. So they keep it a little bit. I don't want to say secret, but they keep it somewhat a little bit of a mystery.
I don't say they. There's just some finer details about the process that are not generally public knowledge. I mean, I think you could probably find it on Google. I went through a couple interviews. There's a process where you're screened based on your paper application, and they reach out to references, letters of recommendation, and then they invite you for an interview. And you're there for 3-4 days, going through an interview, doing these tests, medical tests, and also like team-based tests where you're working with people that you haven't worked before and seeing how you solve a problem, and they're observing how you react.
All right, listen, bro. I know this stuff might be sensitive and everything, but you got to give me at least one cool thing I want to know that they put you in like an escape room. I want to know that you had to they were shooting paintball at you while you were doing math problems. Come on, give me something.
No,
indulge my fantasy a little bit.
Nothing like that. It was fun. Really, really fun. You do things that you have never done before. There were some obstacles. Like you'd be like, hey, you get a piece of paper and you're with your group and you're like, hey, you need to get from point A to point B, but you can't touch the grass in between you and point A and point B. And you might have like a barrel or a piece of wood or some string or something. And you need to devise a way to utilize the resources you have and work effectively in a team to like accomplish your mission. And that's like just one example of some of the team-based things. And that's publicly out there.
Now, what I like about that, what's interesting, so I talk about this in my latest book. Sometimes people feel like when they're trying to show leadership, what they need to do is like step up and tell everyone what to do. And it's interesting to me because I know what you're like. And I know that you wouldn't necessarily be the guy who goes, all right, everyone, listen up. This is how we're going to get the barrel. You'd be like, okay, let's figure out, hey, anyone got a good idea? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I just think it's I think you're like living proof, because sometimes I get pushback of, well, if you don't step up, no one's going to notice you. If you don't start barking orders, no one's going to listen to you. And I have to tell people over and over again, that's not true. I mean, how many times did you hear me yell at Leif or Seth or anyone in Task Unit Bruiser?
I don't remember a single time. And that's not something you praise in public, but criticize in public is not, I cannot think of a situation where that is a good idea, to humiliate or belittle a subordinate. That does not engender trust. That is a very immature thing to do, and that's what we talk about, like letting your emotion take control, your ego take control of your actions. It's not something I've ever seen.
And people look at me and they judge a book by the cover. Sure. And they think, oh, Jocko, man, can you imagine? He must have just been crazy and yelling. It's like, no, it doesn't work. And that's what I like about, like, even just this little tidbit you're giving us is to convince people to say, listen, if you want to be in charge, that doesn't mean you bark orders. Actually, someone that's good will start off by listening to what other people have to say, taking other opinions. Let's formulate a good plan together. And those things are so important, and it's your proof. And I'm only imagining that when you were given a task, there was a couple people in the group that like, all right, guys, listen to me. And I bet the judges, for lack of a better word, wrote down, oh, okay, Bill over here, he really likes to bark orders and tell everyone what to do, and that's not going to go over well being part of a team.
Absolutely. I mean, being a good leader is being a good follower first. And we talked about having that emotional, human, social intelligence of what to do and when to do it and how you do it. And that's so important, how you craft that language and that tone of voice. I mean, I think there is no template to leadership, and people need to find their own way of executing that. For me, I listen. I sit back, and I'm a big believer in quality over quantity of what you say. In my experience, the less you say, but the more thoughtful it is, the more people listen. The more you speak, and oftentimes when you speak a lot, it's less thoughtful, the less people listen.
Yeah.
And I try and exercise that in everything I do, especially at NASA. And learning to, it's very applicable in a SEAL platoon, learning to gain currency. When I mean by currency, you can call it reputation, whatever you want.
Leadership capital.
Capital. Gaining this capital, this currency by at least what I've seen to be effective for others and myself is shutting up and doing a good job and not complaining, but speaking up when it is appropriate, respectfully and thoughtfully. You gain that currency so that hopefully one day when you do need to bark orders because of time sensitivity or just the situation calls for it, you can cash in that currency. You've gained enough, and that the people around you, your teammates, be like, roger that, I'm going to follow, because you have gained my trust. So there's a time for everything. And at least for me, I found that barking orders to, especially to people you don't know, is probably very poor form.
It doesn't work very well. And the quote I have in that book over and over again is, the less you talk, the more people listen.
In my experience, I found that to be true.
So you get selected, all right, and you do all kinds of cool tests.
Did they put you?
We can't even talk about them. Echo Charles.
No. You know that soundproof room that they put you like on Armageddon. You ever watch that movie?
I have. Is that the one where they blow up the meteor? That's
yeah. They drill.
Yeah.
So remember, they put him in that soundproof room and they give him a bunch of questions, and they're like, "Hey, don't go crazy" or whatever.
I don't remember this part, but keep going.
Well, I was wondering if you did that.
Not that I remember. Okay. There were some a lot of interviews, a lot of tests. And I mean, you're running on, and I really can't get into the details, but taking like these personality and these psychology tests.
Yeah. I think that's what they're trying to depict there. Yeah. You know? See if they could like keep it together up there or whatever, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's not like I think you can learn a lot about someone. I think you learn the most about someone when you squeeze them, right? Because in an 8 to 5 office job, you can put on a mask and be whoever you want to be for that period of time. You can fool a lot of people. But when people are squeezed, when you strip away that comfort and they're tired and hungry and cold and suffering, that armor just gets melted away. And you start to see true core characteristics. And that's why we do Hell Week in Buds, right? You want to strip away all that armor and see what is left of that person. If that is someone you want by your side when you are in your darkest days because you're in the heat of battle and you're getting fired upon, you want that person that you know is not going to quit. Now, I'm not saying the cheapest and easiest way to find candidates is throw a ruck on them and say, march in this direction and I won't tell you and stop when I tell you. I think you would get certainly a type of profile of person to not quit and to pursue on, even not knowing when they'll ever stop. But that we need to be a little bit more thoughtful of who